So let's get started, everyone, and then we'll let other folks trickle in as tends to happen. And for anybody who's out there who's going to listen later, hello to you as well. We appreciate everybody listening in and always giving thoughts of talks that they want to hear, and all that good stuff. So, welcome everyone to Numbers Therapy, episode 12. Today's episode titled South Korea, Japan, Switzerland, and Video Games. And yes, that is like a little bit of a non sequitur, and we may touch on gaming a little bit. It's not the whole purpose of today's episode. But given the fact that we showcase a lot of people on here, and that's one of the core focuses of what we do, I think another interesting angle in terms of where we can take it is talking to and about different markets that exist out there and what some of our members, just in terms of background, the purpose, of course, Numbers Therapy is to talk through all of the macro and bring on and showcase our experts. So that's kind of the lens, of course, but more specifically, so everyone can understand how all the big things fit together, make better decisions with NFTs and other investments using a balanced perspective. And certainly having an international perspective is an even more balanced perspective, as there are buyers and sellers there too. Also learn about from of our people in here and get different perspectives as well. And then learn about just different areas and opportunities that exist out there as well, and different ways of thinking. So it's a combination of things, of course. And also, I always say as a reminder, regardless of the topic that we have in here, we have different levels in here, right? So it's really important that everyone comes along for the full ride. So if you're on and listening right now, if you have any questions, we have two chats that exist, right? We have office hours chats where you can put up memes with poop and gifs with poop and otherwise. And we also have guest questions where, you can drop questions in any single time or any time along the way. And these could be both, even if they're introductory questions, even if it's, you need a definition for a word that you think you should understand, which is not true. Everyone's at different levels. Or if there's an acronym that you want to understand, please just drop it into guest questions and I'll make sure to get it answered so we can all be along for the full ride. Lastly, one important note and disclaimer: none of what you hear in here is financial advice. It's all opinions. And so, without further ado, today we've got a twofer today, and that means two for the price of one. For those of you not familiar, so this duo have certainly become crowd favorites within MVHQ for a variety of reasons. They're both former MVPs. And our first dude hails from Switzerland, though I believe he is in Japan currently. In addition to male modeling and being a secret boy band member, he's also become an expert on gas, gaming, and a variety of other topics in the Web3 space. He's also in school building rockets, so there's that too. Our other guest hails from South Korea, and in addition to building a pretty cool tool for us lately, also has successfully made it out to literally every conference so far, it seems like. New York originally, LA, New York again. I believe he's also trained in medicine, but of course, like many of us, Web3 priorities. So I'm very excited to have them both as friends and trusted colleagues. Please welcome Kai and Ralle. Kai, how's it going, man? And Ralle, how's it going?
Yo, thank you so much for that amazing intro. Hey, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much. How are
Good.
you?
I'm doing well. It's another Thursday. I'm really excited about this conversation today and to have you both on and get a twofer. This is our second, for anybody who's been following along or not, this is our second twofer that we've had in the history of Numbers Therapy. So I'm excited to have this on, and I like these kinds of conversations because we get different perspectives, right, in the same conversation, and it I feel like it leads to a richer conversation even. So I'm really excited to have you guys on. So maybe let's start with background first, if you guys are into it. So you two have wildly different backgrounds, right? And that's, of course, the beauty of like our community and even just the Web3 community in general. There's lots of people, lots of different backgrounds. Ralle, let's start with you. Can you tell us a bit about your background pre-NFTs? And we'll get into NFTs later and how you got in and all that good stuff. But what were you doing before? Where was your focus and background? And maybe you can like tease a little bit in terms of like how some of it maybe was useful in the NFT space too, if in any way.
Thank you for the intro, Aslo, by the way. And I'm super excited for this and having this wonderful time with the MBHQ fam. So About me, I'm actually a doctor in South Korea, but I don't practice medicine these days. But I used to be a doctor, like Aslo said. Um, I think it might be like the first time I'm saying it like in voice chat, but I used to be. So when I was in medical school, I kind of coded and sold the little softwares to like pay myself for the tuition, and I graduated like 3.5 years ago. And instead of practicing medicine, I decided to start my own company, which was like mostly. So we built over the last 3 years like a couple of apps, and we pivoted multiple times. So I think like the DJ Mint stuff is like our fifth product as a company and with my colleagues. But anyways, so we've been pivoting and developing apps like different kind of apps. So for example, one of them was like tagging YouTube videos with some cosmetics for like the girls and those kind of like weird stuff that don't really fit me. But yeah, so we've been like we weren't that successful when we were building those mobile apps. So about a year and a half, actually about 2 years ago, we started like building things in NFTs, just because we thought that nobody really knew about NFTs were back then. That was even before like the Bored Apes and those like PFP projects. So we started like building our own thing in NFTs because our team thought that if you are a startup, you have to like build in a space where nobody really knows about it, but it will be like big in the near future. And that was what we thought about NFTs 2 years ago. So like the first product that we built was a not sure if how many of you guys are familiar with those Twitter thing. What was the name? Does anyone know the name of the service that Jack Dorsey sold this tweet for some like couple of millions?
So you're talking about the service where that initial tweet that he had, where he packaged it up and sold it. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah. That was basically like you could like convert your like tweet into NFTs with a couple of clicks. So we built exactly that with YouTube videos and tried to like market it in South Korea. But back then, nobody really knew about NFTs. And one thing that we found was that it was very difficult to persuade the creators because like creators and their like subscribers and the fans have a very like delicate relationship where they can't really blatantly monetize off their like fan base. So they didn't think that like selling their videos as some weird digital like collectible would be like good for them. So we had a very difficult time persuading it. So that service too didn't really get going. So we stopped developing, and so we started talking about what our next step should be. And we thought that just because we started in NFTs well early, we should like look for other opportunities and keep like building in NFTs. And that was when like the Bored Apes came out. So as a team and as we are like Korea based in South Korea, so we started seeing people trading these weird monkey pictures, and back then we thought that this was really funny, but really didn't get it. So we were talking about buying one just for the culture and just for the fun of it, but we didn't. And we saw like Bored Ape reaching some like 10 ETH or like I think like 10, 15 ETH. And that was when we started thinking about, well, this like trading with monkey business picture is a real business, and people are really like super like obsessed with it. So we thought that we should like start trading those NFTs full time. So our team stopped like building stuff for 2 to 3 months, and started in our own way, own different ways, like trading NFTs. So because I was like able to speak English, I got into like on Ethereum, and most of my friends, my colleagues, ended up on Clayton, which is a South Korean like blockchain. And another guy started like trading on Solana because he didn't like the gas stuff on Ethereum. So we like traded 3 months at least with full time, and started discussing what we should be building. So before like DJ Mint, I didn't really say it, but we released a very similar concept, kind of like DJ Mint on mobile app. But again, that wasn't successful. So we stopped developing again and traded for about a month. And that's when we started DJ Mint. So that's how I ended up here, I guess.
That's a super rich and really built that background that I'm hearing this, of course, for the first time also, like many of you. And why I like it is there's a lot of meat in there, Ralle, of things that we can dig into. Like I hear cultural trends, which maybe we could touch on at some point. But also I think one other thing that I think is worth calling out before we get to you, Kai, in a second too, is, this kind of startup framework that you were kind of touching on too, which is, and it's Web3 centric, or not even Web3 centric too, also Web2 centric. But this concept that you guys were ahead of the curve, trying to create demand for something that people didn't even know could be a thing, right? Which were these YouTube videos, turning them into NFTs originally. And it sounds like, and I think we'll get to this later, the contrast between that, building something that people might want, but they don't, maybe even don't even know that they want yet, versus it sounds like the approach of where you went to, which is really digging in and finding out where people's pain is and where there's actual need that exists, and building off of that. And I'm guessing that's where we're going to go, is my best guess with the Gen Mint, but I guess we'll see in a little bit. Kai, not to, the two people that we have on today, I just want to really call out. They are wildly different in terms of background, but they're equally impressive, I would say. So, Kai, you want to talk about your background a little bit, like what you're doing lately, and where's your focus outside of Web3 and even before Web3?
Yeah, thanks. Well, first of all, I've heard Ral's background for the first time as well, and I'm like impressed. A doctor? That's insane. Well,
Not anymore.
you were, but you know what I'm saying. Well, for me, before NFTs and before crypto, I've been a student. I still am, but I am a engineering student, specifically electric engineer. Um, I'm doing a lot of math, a lot of physics, a lot of computer science, more hardware based though, and that's where my rocket things come in. I'm part of a group. I was I was part of a group that built sounding rockets for actually just for fun. It's a group of university students, just all university students building a rocket basically to win a competition in New Mexico. Um, but yeah, I was super focused since I was really into getting good grades. I was studying a lot, which I had fun in. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that background, and that it's just very different across the two of them, of course. And I mean, again, I think that's always the theme that comes up in here is, yeah, okay, like doctor and electrical engineer, whatever. But like, again, like it doesn't, they have skills that they probably pulled from, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's not like being a doctor exactly explicitly translates to being a successful Web3 trader necessarily, right? Other than maybe time and attention. So it's good to hear those backgrounds and hear the variety, and we'll connect that bridge, I guess, in a little bit. One thing that stands out to me, guys, is, and we were talking about this even before, right? Is we know that the U.S. is far more NFT centric, and Ralle, you've told stories about Korea being behind, right, and limited people being in Web3, and even the opportunity to be able to create community there. Kai, also for you in Japan, I remember the day that the Tezuka's minted, and you were talking about like what's going on in the market there. Solo has also talked about that a little bit too, and I sense that Switzerland is behind a little bit too. So, I know, in Ral's case, for instance, you talked about stumbling on Bored Apes, but it sounds like it was even earlier than that, right? That you had your thoughts, and for Kai, you as well. How did you guys initially stumble upon the concept of NFTs? Let's say, which may be different for both of you. So, Kai, how did you hear about NFTs originally? Where did it come from?
Well, it came, I think, around a year after I started investing in crypto. Um, the first the first time I heard about it was through one of the coins that I invested in. I think it was called Super Farm. Yeah, from the guy from YouTube. I forgot his name. Good research, by the way, from me. Investing in shit coins like that. Anyways, they had this like campaign of selling this one NFT that will give you benefits and holding and whatever. And that was the first time I've heard about NFTs. Um, and then slowly, um, well, being in the space, I've heard left and right how people made money in NFTs, and you know, Bored Apes came up, and I was like, what is this? Why are people paying this much for this? And curiosity got me into this. Um, yeah, and slowly, doing my own research, I came across MVHQ, where my journey actually started, where I really took time to, uh, you know, took the time
That,
to do my research here and got
that's
into
awesome.
this.
That's awesome. I think Superfarm is Elio, if I'm not mistaken. But
Yeah, exactly. Alio traits.
yeah, okay. Oh yeah, I'm just looking at the chat, and God hates NFTs also called that out too. So there we go. Very very
Amazing.
good. Raul, it sounds like yours was an interesting path also, right? That it wasn't just like you heard about Bored Apes or you heard about Top Shot, but you guys had you and your team. It sounds like had some hypothesis of this, things going in this direction, maybe even earlier than most of us. It sounds like maybe even before they were even called NFTs, possibly. So, how did that happen? Like, what were you guys doing in terms of keeping your eyes open? How did you stumble across a concept like this, and as a result, to consider doing the YouTube video thing? Like, where did that come from?
So it was pretty reckless because I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was late 2020 or very early last year. But I think it was more like November 2020 or something. And so back then, we were developing a mobile app, kind of like a dating app, but we really didn't want to do it. But the only reason we were developing that dating app was we didn't have a decent idea that we should be working on, and we just wanted to make some money to keep our company going forward. But then that was when we started reading this weird NFT related. It was still back then. It was called NFTs, but nobody at least in South Korea, knew about it. But because I was able to speak English, I was like reading some like tech articles. I think it was on like Hacker News that I first saw what NFTs were. So I just like brought that news article back to our team, and we just stopped developing that thing because like in 2 days and start building the fastest, like the easiest idea that we thought was around NFTs, which was that YouTube thing, because it was literally almost the same as the Twitter thing, but for NFTs. I'm still trying to figure out the name, but yeah, I think it was called Scent. Yep. So we built the YouTube thing in 2 months and started marketing to Korean YouTube creators. We onboarded a couple, like someone like a football. By football, I mean soccer. Football YouTuber with 500,000 like subscribers, but that was like the only like pretty well known YouTube that we could got, and we didn't find like the product market fit, so we stopped.
That's super interesting. Before we get into the next question, which the next question is, talking about, now that we're at this point and you guys have had a chance to digest and think about like the past year or so in Web3, I'm curious to hear your takeaways. But before we get into that, Ral, I just have a curiosity question for you on that, which is what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense. And I'm just kind of with the YouTube, YouTube videos and being able to monetize. I'm wondering if, do you think in hindsight, is this just a case where you guys were too early? And if you were 6 months later or 8 months or 12 months later, that might have gone very, very well, for instance, or was it still too far off? And we'll get to it a bit more later, but is the market too far off in Korea at this point that it's just hard to get people's attention, even still with NFTs, let's say?
Yeah, I think we were a little early, but I still don't think like YouTube videos would be a successful. I don't think it would have a big enough market for a startup to be successful because when I look in at NFTs, like the core value for how should I phrase it? For a NFT collection to be really successful, for example, like a Bored Apes or Zuki and those kind of super like successful NFTs, they have to be more than just a collectible, I think. And YouTube, like the kind of like value that we are giving for the uh, subscribers and the YouTube creators was like the fans could like keep a history of their favorite collector, and that was it. So there was no like secondary market like forming around this community. But NFTs, especially like these PFP things, are different because like there is still a big enough secondary market for it to be like self-sustainable after the primary minting phase, which I don't think still exists for the YouTube like video kind of industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I guess then at that point, what you probably have is a bunch of different assets that exist, and you'd have to weave some sort of dynamic membership program into it, and it could probably get pretty tricky pretty fast. So yeah, that makes sense what you're saying. So okay, so we're at this point right now, guys, and we're in this kind of bear market for a bit of time, right? The global economy is a little bit a little bit tricky as of late. As a result, not just NFTs, but crypto and even other markets have been a little bit tricky. But most importantly for us, the NFT and Web3 market has been a little bit tricky. So it's a good time to kind of take a pause and reflect a little bit. So for each of you guys, like, what has been the biggest takeaways from the past year or so, and what is your current feeling or temperament as it relates to Web3? Beyond just I know now it's a little bit of a quieter, maybe more degening market, but like, yeah, what are your biggest reflections on the past year, and what's your kind of current feeling in terms of the market overall? Ralle, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
Sorry, I forgot to push the talk. So biggest takeaways. One thing that like Aslo said in the beginning, I've been to the United States like 3 times over the last year. Went to NFT NIC twice and to NFT LA. One thing that I noticed was that maybe one of the reasons why NFTs are so big in the United States compared to what it is in South Korea is because like the culture is so different because South Korean people are not. I don't know how to really describe it delicately, the delicacy, the difference between the Western people and the South Korean, but it's like Korean people, the stereotype, if you guys know like about Korean people, like Japanese people, the Asian people, they're very like humble and they're not that outgoing. So for us, for most like Korean people, it is really easy to mingle with like completely complete strangers, like party like place. But like I went to NFT and I see and those like satellites events and those parties that I went to, it was super fun. But I doubt it would be as fancy and as fun as it would be if we had that similar kind of events in South Korea. So I think like if you are like a NFT holder, but one of the things that you get hyped about are like these super like cool parties and just being in the party, you get to mingle with like cool people and the cool community, and being a part of that gives you some value. But I don't think any like South Korean NFT collection has provided that level of coolness. If I like if that's the right word to explain it. So I think that's one of the reasons why like NFTs are so big in the West, and also because it's some other thing. I've been hearing like those like the mass gun shooting in the United States, and I've been talking with a lawyer friend who lives in the United States and practices there, and he said that in the United States you have a right as a citizen to rebel against the country with the gun, and that was why it is so difficult to ban it. I don't exactly know how you call it, but in Korea we don't have that. And I'm saying this that because I think one of the cool like difference in the mindset of the people in Asia and in in West are like, I think the word freedom resonates with the Western people more than it does in Korea, because and so like what I felt was that for the people in the United States or like in Europe, uh, they hate it more than we do in South Korea when like the government tells them what to do. In Korea, we complain, but we do what they say. But in the United States or in the West, they like complain and then take actions. So what I felt was that the core like theme, the core ideology of like Web3, the decentralization, resonates with the Western people more than it does in Asia, and I think that's why it's so like big and popular over there. But that is just my theory. I'm not sure how true that is, but that's what I felt.
That's super. That's super interesting, and I have a lot, at least a few questions to ask off of that. But I guess the biggest question that's in my mind is, okay. So we're kind of suggesting that it's not as not as flexy as Board Robot says in here, right? A bit more cautious, a bit less rebellion. Let's say, like that's the thread of what you're saying. So what I'm trying to think about then, Rel, is like what adoption curves have looked like for other products, right? Even something that's like not as flashy and crazy as NFTs, for instance. So let's just say like a powerful new device comes out, for instance, right? That maybe not is so outwardly flashy, although maybe your friends will see it, but it's the kind of thing that nobody's seen before, and like you could be the first person to buy it, whatever. And not for an immediate answer, but I'd be really curious to know what adoption curves look like in South Korea, and how you go from something being completely new that's kind of makes people a little bit uncomfortable, it's a little bit unique and different, to it becoming a new thing that everybody has all of a sudden, right? Because it feels, if I'm hearing you, if I'm hearing what you're saying, and if I had to think about it, what I'm kind of feeling is like in the US, you might have some crazy early adopters that exist, many of whom are in here, right? People who are willing to take a chance, willing to, attach themselves to something that to outsiders looks crazy or looks degenerate, or whatever else it is. And then you start to get some momentum because you have the crowd build up and it spreads to social and all that good stuff, right? But it might be a little bit of a different curve in Korea, of course. And I don't know, it's just something that's on my mind, not for an immediate answer, something that would be fun to talk about a little bit more. What about you, Kai? Like, you've been very knee deep in this space. You've been, of course, in here a lot. Optimizing gas, thinking through contracts, thinking through all sorts of projects. What's been your biggest reflection or reflections on the past year or so? And where how are you feeling currently? What's your temperament as it relates to NFTs and where they're going and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so I guess when I think of takeaways and what I've learned this past year is is money flow. This is something I didn't really know about before because I didn't have money, and thus I wasn't really involved in events or kind of markets that involved a lot of money. And I think this is something I've heard in voice chat in MVHQ, and this sentence just stuck with me since then. Is someone said, I believe it was someone, I believe maybe it was Seth or Dave or someone in that direction. They said, what did I say? Um, oh yeah, they were saying something about money rotating from one collection to another. This one new collection with a lot of hype coming up and building up a lot of momentum, and they were saying, "Hey, the floor prices of other collections are going down because of this new collection, and people are putting money into that." And I was mind blown by that statement. I never thought about that. I always took the the liquidity that was there as granted, which is totally well, a newbie thing to think about. But I think that is the idea that stuck with me. Where the money is coming from, where it's going, kind of stuff like that. And in terms of where we are in Web3, and I think what Raul said about kind of the Asian part of the world being more how to say reserved and not really open for parties. I think that has some truth to it, but there are parties everywhere, right? There are communities everywhere with whatever you do, and however, in terms of where we are going right now, in what kind of direction we're going, I believe I can more talk about the tech side. Like this NFT concept idea is a new technology, right? It came up, and then hype built up, and a lot of people jumped in with kind of the we, right? We thought, me myself included, we thought this is going to be, this is the thing that's going to change the future. It's a new technology that's going to make the world decentralized, blah, 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 all that good stuff. But, hey, Meg's saying hi in the chat. I believe, we saw that, right? We saw the money come in, the bubble forming, and then kind of bursting in some way, and then volume going down. And I think this is simply, another wave of something new coming up. People getting excited about it, but then a bit dying down, the hype dying down. But then technology is here. It's people are now aware of it, right? And then slowly but surely, I believe we will continue building on top of that and coming up with new ideas, and you know, um, and I think that's where we're going, slowly but surely. New ideas, new innovations coming up, and I think this is also the beauty of the crypto space where we are right now, right? Um, Innovation is happening, and I love it.
Your beauty is, I'm sure, at least several people's in here is pain in the meantime, as we want to get the markets
True,
going.
true, right? Yeah.
But let's talk about, for you specifically. I know gaming has been a big focus, right? You're a gamer by trade, and or partially by trade, but I know a lot of your attention has been on there. Where do you think that's going specifically? Like, where do you think we're at right now? Do you think Web3 games are going to win? Do you think Web2 games are going to win? Like, what do you think is going to happen with that? I'm curious.
Yes, gaming. I've been a gamer my entire life. I love games. And when the idea of NFT gaming came to us, I was fascinated by it. Um, I was fascinated by the fact that, I'm gonna earn my items that I find in my game. How to say? Earn, like, truly own them, and then I will be able to sell them on a marketplace and make money off my game. And that idea was fascinating, right? But then but then slowly, I came to realize money doesn't come from nowhere. It's not granted. That's the takeaway that I was talking about before, right? If I'm gonna sell it, then I will need a buyer, and it's just like any other market. And then part of that, NFTs and gaming specifically, I am very, very bearish on it. Unfortunately, right now, because everything that people say NFTs will bring to gaming, either already exists in a way, or is yeah, it already exists. For example, trading your goods, like selling the items you earned in a video game, skins, for example, or items that exists already. Like secondary markets on top of games exist already. So yeah, and then the question comes in of true ownership, like it's verifiable on the blockchain and stuff like that, which I support, obviously. However, in the end, you know, you will you will have to still, even if NFTs come to gaming, you will still have to log into your account, and then it's going to be somewhat centralized, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense, Kai. I think what I'm hearing you say, if I could recap, is like we were looking at this from like an excitement standpoint and NFTs to be able to provide some kind of a currency, more tradable, all that good stuff. But in reality, the product, right, as it's currently defined, including like how good the games are, how easily you can trade assets, all that is not that differentiated from what already exists maybe in Web 2, let's say. And so, in order for it to be something compelling, it has to be differentiated from Web 2 and that much better so that people will care, people will migrate, all that good stuff. That's kind of more or less what you're saying.
yeah. Also, to add to that, if for example, well, we've seen this actually already. These NFT games, right, that came out and died off a bit. This past year, couple months, they were advertised as the play to earn, the true. You're going to be able to play and earn assets that you're going to be able to sell and stuff like that. And I believe for gaming that is borderline predatory because
Sure.
in the end, yes, if you advertise a game as play to earn, then the entire goal of playing that game will be to, in the end, sell your assets and earn. And I believe this is somewhat contradictory to what a game, wants to offer you. It's in the end because I play for fun. I play
Yeah.
because I want to have fun with my friends, right? And sure, it's going to be cool if I could sell my assets, but I can already do that if I play, for example, some League of Legends and level up my account and whatever, reach a rank. I can sell that account on a secondary marketplace already, right? It doesn't have to be marketed around that part of earning, because in the end, I believe, if that happens, then it's not going to be play to earn. It's going to be earn only, and it's going to be labor.
Yeah. It's
And
it's super. I mean, it's interesting what you're saying, right? Because the conflict that you're pointing out, which I hadn't thought of it in this way at least, but like the conflict you're pointing out is the whole point of games historically was to build connection and community, right? Where you can actually discuss these things and have friends and have challenges and whatever else. And if you turn it all the way to the other end of the spectrum, it becomes transactional, which is almost the exact opposite of building community, right? People come in for the money, they get the money, they leave and they don't care about the community side of things unless it helps them pump their bags possibly, right? So they seem like they're in direct contrast. And like the related thing that kind of strikes me too from what you're saying, Kai, is also if you make it too much about the money, i.e. make the rewards too lucrative, then more attention gets put there also, of course, right? So it's almost has to be this level of like rewards, but not too heavy of rewards, because if it's too heavy, then people only care about that. So it has to be at a level that people care about it, but don't care too much, and they care as much about the community and all that good stuff as well. So it's an interesting conflict. Ralle, we were talking before, Ralle, and you had an insight also about gaming that was a little bit different, I think, as it relates to Korea, at least. You want to talk about what you're seeing on the gaming side of things that's a little bit different?
Yeah, before I came to this office hour, I did a little research. So I went to some like Korean online communities, and I talked with my colleagues who are more into like Korean NFT projects and who's more active in Korean like Discords. And one thing that I noticed is that blockchain game, it used to be really popular in South Korea a couple of months ago, maybe 3 to 4 months ago. And that was when we had this mobile app called Moodle. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but that was covered a lot in the newspaper media because it was kind of like the first blockchain play-to-earn game that actually worked on the Google Play Store in South Korea, but eventually got banned because it was against the Korean law regarding like any kind of games. So in Korea, like play-to-earn games are deemed illegal. So the hype kind of died after that. And right now, when I like did the research and I talked to like the Korean NFT like communities, interesting thing was that they are like very much interested in a move to those Stefan apps. So there were like 4 apps they mainly talked about. So I think they are kind of a little bit behind the curve because if I remember correctly, people were talking about Stefan about 2 months ago, but that is kind of like the main talking point of South Korean communities right now. And that
That's
aligns with what my Korean friend says about the current sentiment of the NFT market in Korea.
that's A, interesting, and B, a really good segue. So we've got the question that's in my mind more than anything, and maybe it will, be the question on other people's minds in here as well. This is where I think it gets really fun and interesting in these conversations, and why I like this international angle more. Not the easiest question, but you guys can just give your perspective, no pressure, to the best of your ability, of course. But you know, one of the most interesting things to me is this idea of contrasting markets, right? So we've talked already today about like Korea and Japan and what the people like and limitations and all that good stuff, right? And I think that's very valuable to people because many of the folks in here are maybe in the U.S. or in some in Europe, but hearing what these other markets are operating like and what our people in here who are trusted are hearing gives us good insight in terms of like what's going to happen next in NFTs and all that good stuff. So my question to you guys is, and again, it doesn't have to be a perfect answer, just like your quick reaction or thoughts, is what will it take for NFTs to become a thing in Korea in your mind? And what will it take for NFTs to become a thing in Japan? Or are we a long way off? Or like, what do you guys think? What is your reaction there? Where are your heads at for that? What's the prognosis there? So let's start with you first, Ralle. Like, you mentioned earlier in Korea that it's a bit more reserved, not as many parties, which could be a product issue, or it could just be that people don't want it necessarily. How do we get Web3 and NFT expansion in Korea? How do you think that's going to actually happen? Or do you think that's going to actually happen?
I think it's going to happen eventually. It's just going to take a longer time. I think it might be slightly different. Like in in the West, I feel that the community aspect of NFTs are more very driving the main driving force of NFTs, and because of those communities like Bored Apes or like Azukis, or maybe Bored Apes and like CryptoPunks, they're covered by the mainstream media a lot. So it naturally brings more exposure to NFT industry and more people get into it. So it's kind of like a positive cycle. But in Korea, we don't have that because there isn't a super popular NFT collection everybody talks about. So we don't have that yet. But I think there have been some profitable NFTs, and I see that a lot of like there are very early stage alpha groups forming in South Korea, kind of like an MVHQ, but it's not as organized and not as many like active people in it. In the West, like we have a lot of different alpha communities, right? But in Korea, I see that there are alpha groups that are starting to form. They're not token gated yet, but they're kind of like a free alpha group, and people just hang around with other traders to discuss what their next strategy will be. And people have been starting to forming around like the profitability of NFTs, not just the community aspect. So they view NFTs more as an investment asset at this stage. But with like crypto back in 2017, the investment value of NFTs is very important too, because if people make money, they talk about it with their friends, and then naturally brings more people into the ecosystem. So I think Korea is going a completely different way. So it's more like a traditional crypto, like coins kind of thing, not the like NFT with its intrinsic community value.
That's interesting. So it sounds like what you're saying is it's not so dissimilar from like what happened in the U.S. and other places, but it's maybe a little bit of a slower, more measured curve, and it's just going to take a little bit more time to get there and appear maybe in a little bit of a different way as well. Is that a reasonable summary?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Kai, what about for you? Do you think in Japan, or if you want to talk about Switzerland too, feel free to contrast that too. But at least in Japan, does it sound similar to what Ralle is saying? Do you think it's going to feel different than that in terms of adoption? Like, what do you think? What are you seeing? What do you think? How do you think adoption is going to go over time in Japan from what you know?
Yeah, so like Carl said, a lot of reservance here in the Asian side. In Japan specifically, right now, I think this is a problem overall, not only in the crypto side of things, but in Japan we have a lot of elderly people that are comfortable in their seats, not really making many changes, and there's this talk of um, you know the currency value declining and economy sinking because of that, and like young people not getting really a chance. So I believe with time, we're gonna see a slowly, a slow buildup, like in Korea, in terms of if we're talking about like mass adoption or something like that, and with that, small communities are going to form, and through that, a bit of money is going to come in here and there, and people are going to be able to profit from that, also, like we've been seeing. And when you said, Aslo, when are NFTs and Web3 in Japan? When is that going to be a thing? I was thinking, how do you define becoming a thing, right? Is it mass adoption and public recognition of that technology, or is that people like us traders being able to profit out of that, right? Because those are different things.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking a really good question, right? Which is it even a thing in like the US yet, or in
Right.
Canada or other places? I don't know, right? Like, are the people that we have in here and like the several 100,000 people in the space, does that constitute a thing? I don't know. I know it's probably relatively ahead, and that the Western markets tend to comprise like the vast majority of of traders or investors in the space, or even people working in the space, I think too. But you're right. I mean, it's even here. It's what is it? Probably less than 1% of the population in NFTs. So I don't know. Good question you're asking, Kai. And I don't know if I have a perfect answer for it. Maybe it's something like, the initial start of direction. Maybe it is like Ralle said, hearing it in the media a little bit more. Maybe like the simple litmus test for it is like, if anybody, of an appropriate age has like some friend or friends around them that are touching the space, and maybe that's a pretty good test to tell whether it's starting to become a thing a little bit more, right? It's like looking at your friend group or extended friend group, possibly.
Yeah, so for me, when I came to Japan, I'm here in Japan, by the way, for vacations. Been talking to my friends about what I've been doing and stuff, and saying that I've been in the crypto NFT space, trading JPEGs, and surprisingly, a lot of them knew about NFTs. So it's starting to have like recognitions. Is that a word, recognitions?
Yeah, that works, or recognition or awareness, or yeah,
Recognitions.
we know what you're
Yes,
saying. Yeah,
that's the
got you.
word. Yeah. Um, and so I believe, like I said before, this is a new technology that came, and people are getting aware of that, and slowly it's gonna be a build-up that's gonna happen. That will actually like bring revolutionize something like, I don't know, certificates of authenticity, or that kind of mass adoption potential projects.
That maybe to your point, Kai, the real test is how hard your friends are laughing at you when you talk about the fact that you're in Web3 or NFTs, right? And maybe if it's like a little bit stronger, it means it's a little bit more relevant. If they're not laughing at you enough, it means they're not aware enough. Maybe that's the test at the end of the day of where we're at right now. By the way, as you were talking, I pulled up some data, and I have some fun facts in case it's of interest to anyone. Exactly in line with what Kai was saying. We talked about this the other day, Kai, before today a little bit. And the first thing that you went to was the population of Japan and the demographics that exist. And that's like sticking with me because it's not how I would think to approach the question, but it is extremely important and fair. And so I pulled up information and data while we were talking. Japan is absolute number one in terms of median age of their population in years. At 40, almost 49 years old is the median, not median age in Japan. And by the way, it like tremendously drops off, little by little in the beginning, but tremendously drops off after that, such that there are only four countries that are above 45 years old. And then it just falls down, down, down from there. Not only that, Japan also has just about the smallest percent of the population under 20 years old. So meaning this is not just about older people, this is also the youngest population who are likely to become the people who work in Web3, NFTs, etc. They have the smallest percentage of their population in Japan, or close to the smallest percentage of population in Japan that is under 20 years old compared to other countries. So I think what you're saying is really an important point to call out. And as I look at Korea as well, because we're contrasting, Korea is slightly in a similar place, not as high up in terms of median age, but I think less than median age. I think the other side is more important, right? Which is the percent of the population below 20. And it seems like Korea actually has a pretty similar issue, as does Hong Kong as well. In fact, Korea is also 17% just about, and Hong Kong is even 16%. And if you look at other countries that exist, if you look at like Europe, for instance, it's 20% plus across the board for the most part. So it kind of suggests to me, like you're saying, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, etc., not as good of a breeding ground, maybe only because there aren't as many relative young people in the country. And that's important, right? On a percent basis, of course. So it's a really good point that you pointed out, Kai. So thank you for catching that and bringing it up. It's really, really good. So I'm just gonna I want to be cognizant of time because we have only a minute or two left. I do see a couple of questions from the crowd. I think one of them is really serious. Relic But the question from Crypto Aqua, or maybe more of a point out for you, Ralle, is have you heard about WeMix on your side? WeMix, it sounds like, is the Steam of Korea. Is that something you've heard of before?
Yeah, that mirrorful like game. So the Remix Studio is a pretty. It was a pretty big like game studio even before like they launched that mirror game, and I heard that that game is pretty popular, like around the world. But I don't know like the magnitude of the popularity. But that's what I heard. So that they launched their own like coin called Remix. So if you're like talking about that coin, I don't like follow the price action of that coin, but that did really well 6 months ago. But I don't see where they're at right now. But the whole hype about like blockchain game play to earn thing kind of died down a little bit. So I'm guessing that probably applies to that coin as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And thanks for the call out, Aqua. Very good call out of a platform to see that even something like that exists, of course, there, and that much attention is there. So, Kai, I did not know you created Jinzo lettuce heads. I'm not sure if that's true or not. For whatever it's worth,
No, that's not true. I did not create a Jinjo.
Okay.
I wish I did. I would have had the time to do this, but props to the person who did this.
Props to the person who did. For whatever it's worth, I thought it was cabbage and not lettuce, but whatever. Maybe we'll have a cabbage collection that comes out too, or maybe I'm wrong, one or the other. So before we wrap up, guys, just last quick hit question. Just curious about, you just had, just quick response you give. What is the number one thing you're excited about in Web3? So in this little bit of a lull right now, but Kai said technology, I know, but what is the number one thing you're excited about in Web3 moving forward? Anything come to your mind? What do you got, Ralle? What's on your? Kai, you go ahead first. What do you got?
Oh no, please, Ralle, please.
I think it has to be like the community aspect, because like I'm from Korea, and before I was into like Web3 NFTs, even though I was able to speak like English, I never really talked to any like people in the United States. So it was actually my first time, getting to know people and spending time as much as I am right now with people that I haven't really met elsewhere and online. So, and I have seen a lot of Korean people who actually travel to NFT NIC just because they wanted to be there. And I think this whole community thing of mingling people all over the world under name of how should I put it, a community like NFT is a really interesting aspect, and I haven't seen that elsewhere.
Very, very cool. Yeah, that community. I'm curious also with what you were saying earlier, with what that looks like, right? Like what that community looks like in Korea for NFT projects versus what we've seen for community so far, right? And it's evolving. So, what about you, Kai? What's the number one thing that excites you most about Web3 going forward?
Well, I would have said, I'm excited to see. Well, this is true also, but I'm excited to see what comes forward in terms of innovation coming forward, right? What new ideas will crypto bear fruit to? But also, I'm very, very excited for the next bull run, if that ever comes around. And trading NFTs and crypto for the past year, this has become a very, very fun hobby for me. So I'm excited to learn from my mistakes and do things better the next time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, in case it makes you feel any better, because you asked if it comes around, I was of the big believer that this market was just pointing linearly towards efficiency over time, right? So what happens is like there's a new market that exists. It gets really exciting. There's lots of money to be made. Everyone comes into it. Then when they come into it, tools get created and analysis tools get created. And then it becomes easy for everyone to trade, and you lose your edge, and you're kind of on your way at that point. Like, it's tapped out. There's no more money to be made. But I've shifted my opinion just from one simple idea moving forward, which is that, I guess, two things. One, shitcoins, which is not NFTs per se, but like, shitcoins from like a generate standpoint, have existed for years, and they've come in like several waves at this point. And number two is that people will always want volatile things with some kind of gamble, exciting element, and all that good stuff. And I think that in and of itself will mean that there's opportunity, especially because we're all attached to the space and keeping our eye on it as the market evolves. So I'm not sure, how quick it's going to come. We don't have the markets for that right now, it seems like. But I'm pretty confident it's going to come in some way. So wave 2 will be fun. There's no doubt about it. And with that said, I think we're at time now, a little bit over. So thank you for everyone just kind of sticking in there. But Ralle, Kai, really appreciate you guys coming on. I mean, such a good conversation, and really, really loved hearing it. Like, really valuable from my perspective, at least, and I think the crowd, in terms of hearing the different international perspectives and like the subtlety and all that good stuff. So thanks so much, both of you guys, for coming on and sharing all your thoughts and being so thoughtful about everything. I appreciate it. We all appreciate you. I think you guys know that. And yeah, thanks so much. And thank you everybody else for joining as usual. Next week, we'll probably be back to our original time, which is an hour later than we did today. But we'll see. As the international thing evolves, maybe we'll be on random time zones moving forward. So we'll see how this evolves moving forward. But thanks again, guys. Appreciate everyone.
Thank you, Aslo. It was really fun.
Thank you, everybody. It was really fun for me too. And thank you for organizing this wonderful time, Aslo and Kai.
Hey, thank you.
All right. We'll see everybody back in VC1. Thanks, guys.